Hello everybody, I'm the Pale Recluse, coming out of hiding to present you with another reading. This time we're going to be taking a look at a fanfiction titled Me and Mennonite, A Tale of Love. Now the reason I'm doing a reading of this fanfiction is because I want to tackle the subject of self-inserts. If you couldn't tell by the title, this is basically a self-insert fanfiction. Now in general, self-inserts aren't inherently bad, but issues start to arise when said self-insert is written like a Mary Sue. The following can easily turn a self-insert into a Mary Sue. Their positive traits are either overly exaggerated or they're absolutely perfect in anything they do, even if it's their first time doing it. Their flaws are either majorly played down or they're non-existent. They're written to have the environment around them react to them in an unnatural way, such as everyone, and I mean everyone, loving them or hating their guts. And, if it's a fanfiction, having the characters react to them or interact with them that's way out of character of them. And unfortunately, a lot of people seem to forget that, in a sense, self-inserts are supposed to be characters to some degree, and not just extensions of them so they can depict their fantasies. And that's exactly how the author wrote their self-insert in this fanfiction. I must admit that I can't criticize self-inserts being inserted in a fanfiction because, for one, I've done it myself when I was a kid. And to some extent, the main protagonist in my book I've been working on is somewhat of a self-insert, but over time, I think I've gotten better at writing than how I started out, and I've written the character in a way that's believable in the world they reside in and is relatable to the audience. So self-inserts can work if you know how to write them, but that won't stop me from criticizing a bad self-insert when I see one. Enough babbling though, let's proceed to read Me and Mennonite, A Tale of Love. This is just a recorded version of my Me x Mennonite fantasies. I doubt anyone will read it, but hey, why not? I'm bored out of my wits and have nothing better to do. End of story. Rated M for upcoming chapter. Guess what it's about?
Oh boy, I can't wait to read some hot smut.
Oh wait, we can't read that because this fan fiction has only 2 chapters and was last updated in 2010. Hey, it might be old, but it's not immune to criticism. Ben and I walked slowly down the hallways of Castle DDD, as if anticipating something. I was hiding behind one of the hundreds of statues of DDD that litter the hallways. I could tell that he could sense my presence since his yellow eyes flashed pink. Okay, so right off the bat, we can see that the author is basically following the anime canon instead of the game canon. No big deal, really. Hell, I've only watched the anime instead of playing the games. But that doesn't stop the author from making some mistakes. They write Mennonite's eyes changing colors quite a bit throughout this fanfiction to show what emotion he's feeling, when in actuality, that doesn't happen very often. There are only a few episodes where his eyes change color, and when it does happen, it usually only happens once. So if you're going to make Mennonite's eyes change color, try to keep it to a bare minimum of, I'd say, once or twice. He let out a slight chuckle before continuing on. Not really caring that he already knew I was coming, I leapt out at him, trying to tackle him. Thus he sidestepped and turned around to look at me lying on the ground beside him. I groaned in pain from the fall. Damn it, Menny, I groaned as I picked myself up, rubbing the new-formed goose egg on my forehead. Why do you always have to do that? When the author says goose egg, I think they mean one of those big bumps that you see in anime. They could have just called it a bump instead, because calling it a goose egg is kinda weird. He chuckled, and his eyes went pink as he spoke. Because I don't want to be squished like a blueberry. Well, you are a blueberry, see? I said as I stole his mask and darted down the hall. I think Mennonite wouldn't really let that happen. In the anime, he's shown to have sharp reflexes. So if someone did want to steal his mask, he would have moved out of the way before they could even reach their hand out. Either that or he would have sliced it off with Galaxia. And if his face was exposed, I think he'd at least keep it hidden. In the games, he teleports away as soon as his mask is broken when you defeat him. I could hear his quick footsteps behind me getting closer. Looking for somewhere to run, I quickly strapped on some mashiko and scaled the wall. I hid in the shadow of one of the pillars and watched as the legendary knight darted down the hallway in search of me. Deciding to play a little tease, I called out his name. Oh, Mennonite! He immediately turned my direction in confusion before darting back down the hallway. Enjoying this, I scaled my way down the hall a little further, so I was in front of him and called out to him again. Manny, I'm over here. Now getting extremely annoyed with me, he stopped and slowly tread down the hall, listening for my next call. I moved a bit further up on the wall and called out to him again. "I've got your mask, Maggie. You better come get it if you want it back." I tried my best not to laugh as he spun around looking for me. Okay, let me admit something right here. I myself am a Meta Knight fangirl. I've been a fangirl of him since I was 14 years old, ever since I saw him in Super Smash Bros. Brawl and in the anime. But here's the thing. If I'm gonna write fanfiction of him, I'd at least do my best to keep him in character, especially when it comes to him being in love with some chick like me. What really bothers me about fanfiction that revolves around him or him and some other character is that a lot of people seem to write him out of character. Like they'll write him to be more emotional than how he usually is, or they'll write him as gullible or not as sharp as he's portrayed in the anime at least. You would think as fans, people would write him to be more in character. I mean, they like him for a reason. Or is it that a lot of fangirls only like him because of his looks? But what I'm saying is that Meta Knight isn't stupid, and he would have caught this chick a long time ago. I put on his mask and took out a set of Tessin and smoke bombed down in front of him. I opened them and elegantly fluttered them in front of my face, taunting him. Furious now, he lunged at me. I could have sidestepped him like he does me, but I let him tackle me to the ground. I tried my best not to cut him with my Tessin as he tried to take his mask back, but I did slap him with them a couple times.
911, what's your emergency? Hello, 911, I'd like to report domestic violence.
His pink cheeks seemed to glow bright red where I had slapped him. He only momentarily stopped to rub his sore cheeks before returning to the task of getting his mask back. I finally decided to just let him have his mask back. He pinned me to the ground and unstrapped the metal disc from my face. He looked down at me with very soft, gentle eyes before leaning down to kiss me. I giggled as he withdrew and put his mask back on him. Immediately his eyes were blue. I playfully shoved him off me before getting up and dashing back down the hall. I could hear him giggle, even from the courtyard. Bun and Kirby were in the courtyard, playing some sort of a cross between soccer and rugby. Uma sat on the edge of the fountain of the center of the courtyard, writing in her journal. I walked over to where I had planted a fruit garden and picked up my basket. I swung it over my shoulder before climbing a pecan tree to harvest the ripe nuts. Once done there, I climbed down and scaled a hazelnut tree and did the same. I repeated this process a few more times with a date tree, fig tree, lemon tree, orange tree, lime tree, and a couple of other trees. Needs more fruit trees. By the time I was on the ground picking some raspberries, Meta Knight had appeared in my walnut tree. I looked up at him and smiled. "Hey, what took you so long?" I joked before continuing to harvest the small fruits and berries. "Oh, nothing. Taking my time to watch the clouds roll by, listen to the birds chirp, enjoy life. What are you doing?" he replied from his perch in my tree. "Well, what I'm doing is a secret, and you will not find out until later," I replied as I tossed him a raspberry. Those were his favorite fruits. This is another problem within the fanfiction. The dialogue is so unnatural. No one ever talks like the characters do here. Hell, Meta Knight himself doesn't talk as presented here. You could pull a random line of dialogue from a fanfiction and say it out loud to yourself, and you'll hear how awkward it sounds. And if it doesn't sound right saying out loud, then it's not going to be any different when you read it. When you're writing dialogue, it's in your best interest to actually say the dialogue out loud to yourself and make changes to it so it sounds more natural, so that way it doesn't come across as awkward when you read it. The exception would be if the character's supposed to be awkward that way. He popped the little red berry into the slit in his mask. Very good. Have you been doing something differently with them? A bit more sour, yet still tangy. I like it, he complimented as his eyes turned green. Actually, yes, I replied. I've been using a new type of organic fertilizer specific for fruits, nuts, and berries. Well, it's very good. You should keep using it, he commented as I stood up from my garden with a full basket of fruit. Well, I'm going to go prepare you your surprise. I'll have one of the Wild D's notify you when it's time. Until then, sayonara, I said cheerfully before walking towards the west entrance. I entered the castle and turned towards my room. I had a lot of preparations for tonight. I watched as Marie entered the castle, savoring every moment of her sight. She was very pretty. Oh, wow. Way to make him a pervert. This is one of the worst ways you could bastardize his character. I jumped down from the spot in the tree I was standing and walked towards the west entrance as well. I picked a daisy growing nearby to give to her later on. She likes flowers, unless if they're orchids. What do you got against orchids? Fuck you. I remember meeting her for the first time as I walked down the corridors of the grand castle. A dark shadow roamed the halls of Castle DDD. Mennonite was casually leaning against the wall. He felt tired for no apparent reason. He also had the feeling that someone or something was stalking him. Fearing this thing, he continued down the hallways at a bit quicker pace than normal. Then it pounced. The alleged warrior immediately drew his sword and turned to prepare himself for whatever demon beast had come at him, only to get lumped by another one of those crazed fangirls that he was so sick of dealing with by now. Wait, time out. So not only are there Mennonite fangirls in Dreamland, but they also infiltrate the castle just to stalk him? Jesus Christ, Dreamland really has fallen in hard times. But in all seriousness, once again, Mennonite wouldn't let something like this happen to him, especially if it's done by a fangirl. He heaved a sigh before returning his sword to his hilt and continuing down the hallways. As he walked away, the crazed fangirl took out a set of sai and scooped up the warrior with them. He twisted and struggled to get away as she took him off of her makeshift hook and squeezed him. Holy shit, you could have punctured the poor guy. As a fangirl, wouldn't you want to make sure he doesn't get hurt, especially if the potential harm could come from you?
Oh my gosh! She squealed as she hugged the oversized blueberry. I knew I would eventually get many. Papa said my ninjutsu classes would never pay off.
What the hell are you doing? The warrior yelled as she hugged him tighter.
Well, I'm giving you a hug, can't you see that? She replied before putting him down. I'm Marie. I already know who you are, Mennonite, so you don't have to introduce yourself.
Damn fangirls. Boy, you got that right, he muttered under his breath before turning to continue down the halls.
Wait,
she called to him before he got too far down the hallway.
I made you some cookies.
That made him turn around.
They're peanut butter with chocolate chips. I thought you might like them,
she called out before running up to him and giving him a large plate full of cookies. Where the fuck did the cookies come from? He looked down at the plate of cookies, quite impressed with their skill. Thank you, he said gratefully as she picked up a cookie and inserted it into the slit in his mask. You could hear his chewing as his eyes turned purple. I don't recall Mennonite's eyes ever flashing purple. Wow, that is the best cookie I have ever had. Thank you.
It's nothing. I was bored out of my wits, so I made you some cookies and came here. These are my best work. I was hoping you would like them. They saved the bake sale at home so many times. I figured you may like them. But yet again, who doesn't like cookies? She said, relatively shy as he ate another cookie. Some people? I mean, there are people who don't even like bacon. These are amazing. Where did you learn to bake like this? He replied, equally as purple-eyed as when he ate his first cookie. Well, my grandmother taught me. You see, my dad loved her cooking, and he wanted the same quality of food at home as when he was growing up. My mom didn't want to learn, so I was the next candidate. So we had her come over, and she showed me to make wonderful things like fried chicken and pies. Well, once she was gone, I applied that knowledge to other foods like cookies. And thus my chocolate chip peanut butter cookies were born, I explained as the knight listened intently while still munching his cookies. That's wonderful. What did you say your name was again? He said as his eyes momentarily turned orange. I'm Marie. It's fine, a lot of people have a tendency to forget my name. That, or they just don't care. Back home I wasn't the most popular person around. Actually, most people back home hated my guts and would give anything for me to drop dead. And that is why I'm here. I came here to avoid life back home. I was overall sick of the fact that I got to babysit my nephew all the time and got continuously dissed for various things by everyone. So I came here to hopefully live a happier life.
Yup, this is one of those Mary Sues, or as I like to call them, sympathy Sues. Look, if the author has had these difficulties in their life, that does suck. But I highly doubt that everyone in their life hates them so much that they'd be happy if they just died. It's also unrealistic because in reality, most people are indifferent to you unless you give them a reason to either like you or hate you. This may not be applied when you're in school because let's face it, most kids are failed abortions. But after school's over with, they don't give a shit anymore. They have their own shit to worry about. I'm not trying to imply anything, but when you write yourself like this, it just makes it look like you're trying to get sympathy.
I figured I could help Kawasaki out in his restaurant. Would you like to please put a good word in for me when I go to apply? She explained as the knight covered up the plate of cookies to keep himself from eating any more. Wow, that's a lot to go through. Well, of course I will put in a good word for you when you go to bless the people with your apparently marvelous cooking. But where will you be staying? He said with concern in his now green eyes. Hey, that's why they've invented trees, right? She replied as the knight set the cookie plate down. Wait, I could give you a better home than in a tree, he said as he took her hand. No, it's fine, I'll be all right. Hey, the only thing to worry about is rain and demon beasts. I know either Kirby or you will take care of the demon, and I love the rain, and don't mind it a bit. I find rain relaxing, she replied before turning to leave. The knight heaved a great sigh before picking up his plate of cookies and turning to leave. He had to hide them from sword and blade.
So from what we learned from the flashback, all it took for Mennonite to fall head over heels for Marie was to just eat her cooking. That doesn't make him come across as shallow at all. Also, he's not so easily impressed by things like that. He'd probably give you his respect if you, say, fight for what you believe in with confidence. I entered the room I shared with Sword and Blade and looked up at the shelf I had put the empty cookie plate. Damn, I still need to return that. Ignoring the task I had just assigned myself for about the 1000th time, I walked out to the balcony. Marie's flat was just beneath mine, and I could hear pots and pans clanging and food sizzling. I could smell the sweet aroma of the food cooking. I unfolded my wings to fly down and see what she was doing, and if she were willing to let me sample anything. Mennonite doesn't have wings in the anime. No, the pilot episode doesn't count because it's not canon with the rest of the anime. I opened the balcony door to see Marie and a couple wallabies running about the kitchen. I walked over to where she was standing and looked at what looked like bacon wraps cooking in the skillet before her. What are you cooking, Marie? I had asked as she turned them over to cook on the other side. Another problem with the fanfiction, as you can see, is the grammar. It's not the worst I've seen, but it's still prevalent throughout the fanfiction. Just a proofread or two should fix that. Oh, nothing. I was just making some snacks for tonight's celebration, she said as she took the little delights out of a skillet and onto a plate. Yes, tonight is New Year's Eve. I almost forgot. Are you making donuts like you did last year? I replied as she blotted some of the grease off of the bacon wraps and stuck toothpicks onto them. You know it. The Poo-Poo-Poos would probably run me out of town if I didn't, she joked as she handed me one of the morsels she had just prepared. I took off my mask and popped the thing into my mouth. The array of different flavors engulfed me as I ate the little delight. Very good. What was that? Bacon wrapped around a meatball with onion and green pepper. I thought I may try something new for the new year, and this is product. What do you think? She spoke as she took a bowl from one of the Waddle Dees. So Marie can use the Waddle Dees at her own disposal and DDD doesn't have a problem with it? Fantastic. I'm sure everyone will love them tonight, I replied as she scooped the dough into a donut former. Well, that's good. I was afraid they wouldn't be any good. I don't want to end up like Kawasaki, she joked as she laid the newly formed donuts on a tray to rise. Is it possible for your food to not be good? Hey, if it weren't for you, Kawasaki would still be the terrible cook he was before you showed up, I replied before taking another tray out of the cabinet. Wow. As if she wasn't a Mary Sue enough. Apparently, her cooking skills are so good that she managed to turn Kawasaki into a decent chef, even though being terrible at cooking as a chef is supposed to be his shtick. Well, that's very sweet of you. Would you like to please do me a favor? She asked as I picked up the tray of donuts and put the empty one in its place. But of course, whatever do you want? I had asked before she took another bowl of dough from the Waddle Dees and started forming them into long johns. Heh, long johns. I need you to run down to the kitchen coop and get me some eggs and a couple chickens, she said as she placed the tray aside and got out a new one. Get the chickens? That's a typo, right? Of course, I said before putting my mask back on and flying out the window to where she kept her chickens. I watched as Mennonite flew out the window. I hadn't a lot of time. I quickly instructed the Waddle Dees to finish the donuts and got out my basket of fruit. I quickly took out the raspberries and started mixing some cookie batter. I made half the raspberries into jam and left the rest be for the time being. I quickly had the cookies on a cookie sheet and thumbprinted. I baked them, and once they came out, I immediately had them filled with the jam I had just made. The Waddle Dees finished the donuts and helped me lightly sprinkle sugar over the top of the jam-filled cookies. I then put a whole raspberry onto them and set them in the cabinet to cool. Mennonite came in through the window with the chickens and eggs. I promptly thanked him and took out my katana. I chopped the chickens' heads off and proceeded to removing the feathers. Oh, that wasn't a typo. Well, a self-insert has balls, because if I had the option to kill an animal to cook, I couldn't do it. I'd be crying like I'm on my period. Mennonite began plucking the feathers on the second chicken as to keep it from spoiling. Once I had the chicken defeathered, I cut off the feet and gutted it. I cut it up into sections and set them aside to be fried later. Mennonite handed me the chicken he had plucked, and I did the same. I took some coconuts out of one of the bags from the supermarket and cracked them open, being careful not to spill them. Once I had the coconut into a jug, Mennonite handed me a scoop to scoop out the insides. Once I had done this to all 8 coconuts, the Waddle Dees put it in my blender and commenced chopping it up. Quick note here, since all Marie's doing is cooking, you don't have to go into extensive detail on what she's cooking and how she's doing it. You could just give a quick summary on what she's doing, otherwise the story will get tedious to read. Mennonite looked up at the basket of fruit in wonder. Marie, why do you do this every year? No one ever said you had to prepare the whole town a feast every New Year's Eve. Why do you? Well, because, I began as I set some coconut milk aside and added the rest to my blender. It makes me happy. I love cooking. Why wouldn't I prepare the whole town a feast on New Year's Eve if I didn't? Why would I teach Kawasaki to cook if I myself didn't love cooking? I love this. Why wouldn't I? Don't you think it's a bit stressful to prepare all this food by yourself over the course of one day and have it ready that night? He asked as I poured a bit of orange juice into my blender along with half a mango and some ice. I lidded it and pulsed it several times. I opened it up and poured the contents into a container before doing the same thing to my next batch, only this time with a bit of wine. Oh shit, she's gonna get everyone wasted. Not really. And besides, I'm not alone. I have the Waddle Dees, and every year you come help. True, but he tried to speak, but was cut off by a glass of the coconut smoothie in his face. Here, I said as I put the straw and a toothpick umbrella in the glass. Try this. I think you may like it. He took a sip of the substance and got an impressed look on his face. How can you tell what his facial expressions are? He's wearing his mask, isn't he? Very good. I've never had a coconut smoothie like this before. Very good. Thank you, Meddy, I replied before leaning over to kiss him on the forehead. The knight finished his smoothie before putting the glass in the sink where the Waddle Dees were washing dishes. Ah, that reminds me, I exclaimed before going into the other room and coming back with the small box in hand. Happy New Year's, Meddy. He smiled and looked down at the box. Aw, Marie, you didn't have to get me anything. You're so sweet. Open it, I said, or I'll make you eat it. Okay. With a wholehearted laugh, he opened the box to reveal his Galaxy Soldier star pin. Seriously? Seriously? Sorry about that. Just why? Is it the fact that you're the best chef in Dreamland, and everyone within it loves and worships the ground you walk on, and have Mennonite's heart enough? Huh? That's not good enough for you? Huh? Huh? Let's just get on with the fanfiction before my brain shuts down. Marie, he said in awe. How did you get this? I lost this years ago. How did you manage to find it? Well, when I was on my way here, my ship broke down and I had to land on Mechanica, and when I was in one of the shops looking for the parts I needed, I found this in a box. I already knew it was a GSA star pin, so I bought it, and when I went to read the back, I spoke softly as the warrior looked down at the pin in disbelief. So the universe also works in her favor. That's fucking great. You know what, Marie? He spoke as he looked from the pin to me. You really are something. Yeah, she really is some Mary Sue. I haven't seen this in years. I don't know how you managed to find it on Mechanica. I thought you would like it, Meddy. I spoke as I took the pin out of his hand and put it back on his shoulder plate. I then kissed him on the forehead before turning to put the donuts, the fryer. He just stood there while I continuously put in and took out the donuts, then put them on a tray beside me. Once they were done, the Waddle Dees prepared some glaze and frosting for them and began working on those. I took the ones that needed a filling and filled them with various fruits, creams, and custards. Some got sprinkles on top, others not. Some got glaze, others for frosting, some both. By the time I was done, there were no two donuts alike. I made sure to make everyone's favorite donuts, plus a few dozen extra. I picked up a cram-filled donut with glaze, chocolate frosting, and nuts on top and waved it around in front of the stunned knight's face that was still in shock over his pin. He looked up at me and smiled before taking the donut. Glisten of tears shone in the corners of his eyes. I watched and smiled as ate the donut, savoring each bite as if it were his last. Oh, come the fuck on, really? When have you seen him cry? Also, I have a feeling that had this fanfiction continued for more than 2 chapters, Mennonite would have diabetes and would have to get his feet cut off by the end of it. I mean, seriously, he's gotten the same amount of sugar in a day that I would give my boyfriend in a couple of months. I'm pretty sure the author is writing him eating all this sugar because in the anime, when you see Mennonite's room, he always has a jar of candy in it. But who's to say he even likes all sweets? What if he only likes candy? I giggled a bit before packing up all the food I had prepared for the festivities. I sent one of the Waddle Dees to fetch about a dozen more to help take the food down to the village square. It soon came back, and the Waddle Dees were running in and out, carrying various plates of food. Once all the food was gone, Meta Knight looked up at me. A bit of cream stuck to his upper lip. I took a cloth and wiped it off so it wouldn't get on the inside of his mask and mold. He smiled at me with tears in his eyes. I love you, Marie. You are a wonderful person. He spoke softly and truthfully.
I love you too, Meddy, I replied, equally as teary-eyed. I knelt down on the floor so that I could see him better. He leaned over and softly kissed me, and I kissed him back. By the time he had withdrawn, he was holding me bridal style.
I don't know how he could hold a full-grown human like that, assuming Marie is a human.
I smiled at him and wrapped my arms around him, nuzzling into him. When I first met you, I thought you were just another one of those crazed fangirls that come here every now and again. But since I've gotten to know you, I now realize that I was so wrong. I really shouldn't judge people the way I did you. He spoke softly as he pulled me closer to himself. Is there any way you can forgive me?
You're not like the other fangirls.
Mocking aside, what makes Marie so special compared to other fangirls? Of course she's like the other fangirls because we saw that she had acted like the stereotype in the flashback. Any other fangirl could have written a fanfiction just like this one, especially with the Galaxy Soldier star pin scene.
No, you didn't know. Everything's fine. We all have a tendency to judge people based on their first impression. I myself have a tendency to do the same thing, I replied tenderly. He sat me back down and I got up. Come on, we better get going if we're going to see how the people react to my new creations. Of course, my sweet, he said as he walked to where I was at the door. Let us go. But wait, I said. I'll meet you there. I have something to do first. He nodded in response and quietly left. I went back into the kitchen where I had hid the raspberry thumbprints and quickly drizzled chocolate over the top of them before leaving. I had taken them to Minnie's room where I carefully arranged them on the cookie plate I had given him his first cookies on. I took a little card out of my pocket and set it up on top of the pile of cookies. I walked down the hall towards the courtyard. Several Waddle Dees sat against the wall, eating something that looked like a croissant with strawberry filling. Marie probably made them. She always thought of everyone, even the king. She's even nice to Dee. She had made him a large cake in his honor that was going to be eaten at midnight. By the time I was at the drawbridge, she was, unknown to me, right beside me. She screamed a battle cry and tackled me to the ground. She laughed playfully as she led me up. I got you, Meddy. Hey, I mused back. That's not fair. You snuck up on me. Because I'm a ninja. And what was that thing you had to take care of? I'm not telling. You'll find out soon enough. Come, we have food to eat. Yes, come, my little blueberry gumdrop. We must make haste as I want to fatten you up. She ran off towards the village, and I just chuckled before I myself left for the village. After the festivities, Marie and I walked back towards the castle. The cool night air had blown slightly. The illuminations from the village slowly darkened as the Poopapoos all went to bed. The night was amazing, everyone loved the food, and she was bestowed the honor of receiving Kawasaki's restaurant to herself. See, this self-insert suit just gets everything handed to her on a silver platter.
How did this even happen? Did DDD just take Kawasaki's own business and just gave it to her? Can he even do that? And if I was Kawasaki and I just had my own established business that I've been running for years taken away from me and was then given to the new girl, I'd be pretty fucking pissed. I'd be like, bitch, go and build your own restaurant. Leave mine alone. We walked through the forest on our way back to the castle. A small stream trickled and several koi swam in it. She randomly stopped and lay down on the bank to poke at the water. I lay down next to her and watched as a koi poked at the water's surface as well. She giggled whenever one of the koi tried to eat her finger, thinking it was a bug or something. I moved closer to her and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Almost immediately she turned her attention from the water to me.
Maddie, she spoke softly and with great care, how did you enjoy tonight?
It was wonderful, my sweet. I wouldn't have had it any other way, I said as I moved a strand of hair from her face. The moonlight shone brightly, giving a bluish glow to her face. She smiled and unstrapped my mask. I smiled at her as she set me mask down behind her. I slowly drew her closer to me and kissed her. As I withdrew, she smiled and flipped me over into the stream. Damn it, what was that for? I shouted playfully before dunking her into the stream as well. Hey! She shouted back before splashing me back. We both laughed before getting out of the stream. As we walked back towards the castle, a Luna moth fluttered overhead and landed on Marie's forehead. She giggled and shooed away.
Think what it would be like to be free as a Luna moth, or any winged creature at that. It would be amazing, getting to see the world from so high without the clunky metal exterior enclosing you. You are very lucky to have your wings, Meddy. I would give anything to have wings, she said in awe as the moth fluttered off into the night. I spoke not a word as she looked up at the sky, up at the stars. Once she was done, she said nothing but turned and walked towards the castle. We waited as the drawbridge lowered so we could enter the castle. Marie had a very solemn air to her ever since the whole Lunamoth thing. I just hoped that she didn't stay like this. As the drawbridge hit the ground, I squeezed her hand and we both left. Sword and Blade were still out on their night patrols, which gave me a chance to relax. I took off my mask and sat it down on the chair in front of the TV. I looked up at the mantel where I kept Maria's cookie plate to find a note and a few dozen cookies of some sort. I picked up the card and read, Hi, Maddie. Happy New Year. I thought you would like some raspberry thumbprints to celebrate the New Year with. What do you think? I hope you like them.
I looked down at the plate to see that the pastries were arranged in a heart pattern on the plate. Ugh, it's so sappy. This is so corny. It's so sickeningly sweet that I have just now contracted diabetes. She is very sweet and caring. I don't really ever do anything for her. I should really do more for her. I walked solemnly towards my flat. A couple Waddle Dees walked by, spears in hand. 3 years ago I would have glommed them due to their sheer cuteness. Will I now? No. Now I have realized how much of a hard time these people have with the occasional crazed fangirl like I once was. Visits from the fangirls were common when I first came here, but ever since Meddy and I have been dating, they now come few and far between. That's because they're all plotting to kill you. They will strike when the time is right, so you better watch your back. I prepared myself for bed and took out my laptop to wish everyone on Facebook a Happy New Year in 10 different languages for 2010. Is that really necessary? Now Marie can speak in 10 languages? Jesus Christ. The red chat box at the bottom of the screen popped up from several people, all wishing me a Happy New Year. I replied to them all the same and put it away for the time being. I need to get my rest as to be awake in time enough to run my new restaurant. Yes, rest easy if you can, because Kawasaki is in cahoots with the fangirls. This was going to be a great year. I awoke the next morning to find Sword and Blade passed out drunk on the floor in front of the TV. I heaved a sigh before getting up to make sure Marie hadn't stayed up all night, wishing everyone Happy New Year in various languages. How the hell does Mennonite know she does that? By the time I had prepared myself for the long day ahead of me, and had a couple of Marie's fabulous cookies she made me yesterday, I went down to her flat. Halfway down the hall I could smell some sort of bacon cooking. As I entered the door, she was sending out 2 plates full of bacon, sausage, eggs, hash browns, and toast with some orange juice and raspberry jam.
Hi, Meddy, she called as she sat down at the table to eat. I figured you'd come for breakfast. Come eat. I know you'll like it. I sat down across from her where she had set my plate. I took off my mask and set it on the table beside me before I started eating. I thought you had to attend to your new restaurant this morning. What happened? I asked as I popped a bite of egg into my mouth. Actually, she started, since I own and run the restaurant, I get to choose my own hours, and they don't really have to apply a certain time. Overall, when I want to go to work, I do. When I don't, I don't. Kawasaki has grown significantly better since I showed up, and is to the point where he doesn't really need my assistance anymore.
And apparently he doesn't need his only source of income to survive in Dreamland either.
Thus I am here, enjoying a hearty breakfast in my night kimono with you.
Oh, I see. And at that I am greatly enjoying the wonderful breakfast you have prepared for me. I thank you with all my heart, I replied before popping a bite of hash brown into my mouth. As we finished our breakfast, Marie got up to pick up our plates and silverware. Last night I had thought up the perfect solution to me not doing enough for her. As she walked back into the dining room, I sat her down on the couch. What's going on? She asked in confusion as I sat next to her. What would you say if I said we should go on a trip? A vacation, may I say? Just you and me on a trek around the universe, I asked as I took her hand in mine.
Why, Meddy, she asked in slight shock. Why all of a sudden?
Well, you always do so much for me and try your best to make me happy, and I feel as if I just don't really do anything for you, and I figured that the both of us could go on a trip and tour the most beautiful places in the universe. So what do you say? I replied as she sat and stared at me in shock. Why would Meta Knight leave? Unless his business is finished in Dreamland, it's his obligation to stick around and make sure nothing happens to the castle or the kingdom. This actually seems like something he would be entirely against.
Well, first I'll have to notify everyone that I'll be leaving for a considerable amount of time. I'll have to arrange some wildings to keep my flat clean while gone, and...
Don't worry, I reassured. I've already arranged for Sword and Blade to keep your flat clean and free of pests while you're gone. I wrote out notices and had Sword and Blade go out to pin them to everyone's door, notifying them of your absence. And I've already got plans made for a transport. All that's left is for you to pack your bags.
Meddy,
she murmured before scooping me up and squeezing me tight to her chest.
You're so wonderful.
I smiled and hugged her back. You'd better get packing if you want to leave soon, I said as she took a couple bags out of the closet. Whew, we got through the first chapter. On to the last one. Stuck using WordPad until I can figure out how to fix Microsoft Word. Sorry about all typos that will infest the story more than in my other stories. So yeah, I should be working on my other stories, but screw them, they're all mentally bricked or I really don't feel like typing them right now. How the hell does Microsoft Word break? I've never heard of this. I had packaged a couple bags to take with me on my vacation with Meddy. With Nightmare gone, the universe was a safer place and he was wanting to take me on a tour of the universe.
Okay, I have clothes. Should I bring my weapons? Maybe just a bow and some shuriken. Yeah, those and my tessin should be fine. Okay, clothes, weapons, lucky sock. Wait, where's my lucky sock? Okay, apparently my lucky sock is not going. Damn. Travel pillow? Check. Black sweater? Check. Epic cape? Check. Epic coat? Check. I muttered as I went through the list of things I needed to bring. Spare blanket? Check. Toothbrush? Check. Hairbrush and dryer? Check. Kindle? Check. Watch? Do I really need a watch? Screw time. I'm going to be having the time of my life. I don't need to rush myself with the schedule. Okay, watch. Screwed. Laptop, gloves, check. Gaming systems? What kinds of gaming systems does Meddy have on his ship? Meddy! Yes, my sweet, the legendary warrior called as he entered my flat with his plate of newly made cookies. We're going in the Halberd, right? Actually, no, I've arranged to go in a yacht I had borrowed from the king. Which one? The white one. Yes. I already knew that the king's white yacht had everything under the sun on it. Perfect fought deep space traveling. Video games? Taken care of. Okay then, I'm ready to go. What about you, Meddy? I called as I picked up my bags and headed to the door in which he was standing. I'm ready when you are, he replied as he took my bags. Well then, let us go. Huzzah! I called in response, followed by a giggle from the both of us. And with that, we left. Maria and I sat in the control room and watched as Sailor D launched the small yacht that we were taking on our journey. Out the window you could see DDD running up to the floating airship, yelling something like,
That's my yacht! Come back here with my yacht! Marie looked out the window and chuckled before turning to me.
You stole the yacht, didn't you?
Hey, I replied, nobody's perfect. Mennonite wouldn't steal something from someone else, not unless it was for a good cause like protecting Dreamland. Other than that, he would find this pretty selfish. She chuckled before turning back out the window to where she could see the kingdom growing smaller and smaller. Wait a minute, they're on a yacht, right? But it can fly? What? Hey, I said as I stood up, let's go see the rest of the ship.
Okay,
She replied as she stood up and stole my mask.
but you won't be needing this for our trip when we're on board the ship.
Okay, I mused as she handed me my mask. Only when we're on the ship. When out in public, I've got to keep it on.
Okay.
Ah, here's where we'll be staying, I said as I pressed a button on the wall panel next to a door. The door slid open to reveal a futuristic-looking room with the wall made completely out of glass, revealing the beauties of space.
Oh my gosh,
I muttered as Mennonite set our bags on a round bed with white sheets. Do you like it? He said as I walked about the room without direction.
this is way better than gray brick coated in glow-in-the-dark stars,
I said as the warrior chuckled. Would you like to know our first destination? He said as he started unpacking his things.
Yes, please,
I said as I focused in on the night. We will be heading to Floria, he said as he tucked his bag under the bed.
Floria, the grass planet, right?
I said in thought. Yes, there I have arranged for us to tour the seasons, and they have many exotic fruits that I'm sure you'd love to plant in your garden back home. We will be arriving there in about 3 days, he said as I unpacked my things. You seriously brought your weapons? He said as he glared at me.
Only a few. You never know when one of the stray demon beasts will attack. I would have preferred to remain alive for our entire vacation. Is there a problem with that?
He said nothing, but instead hung my weapons in a closet. Why is he against that? If anything, he would think that's a smart move, but now he's against self-defense?
And what about your sword? Didn't you bring that?
I said as his face turned red.
Give it to me.
I held out my hand to him for him to give me the hilt that contained Galaxia. He reluctantly handed me his sword, and I hid it away in the closet along with my own weapons.
Now then, since you insist on there being no weapons on this journey, there won't be,
I said as I closed the closet door and hung the key up on the hook on the side of the bookshelf. His face returned to its original color before he lay down on the bed. Well then, looks like we're on our way.
Yes, we are,
I replied before laying down on the bed next to him and wrapping my arms around him. He turned to kiss me, and midway through the embrace, Sailor D came in with our lunch. He pulled away to glare at the Waddle Dee before softly kicking it in the side. Well, considering how much the author messed up Mennonite's characterization, I'm not surprised they wrote him to be a dick. It immediately left with a small squeal before the knight turned his attention back to me.
We'd better eat before our food gets cold,
I said as I sat up to uncover a plate full of grayish-brown whatever with wings. I looked down at our meal and slowly put the lid back on before shoving the cart aside.
If you want that, go ahead. I'm going down to the kitchen to make my own lunch,
I said as I got up, out left, Mennonite right behind me. And that's it. Yeah, this chapter was super short. Granted, it wasn't as bad as the first one since it didn't show as much problems as that one, but that's not really saying much. You think the perverted chapter would come in here, didn't you? Well, wrong! That's going to be more midway through towards the end. So we're going to Floria. How fun! Need to teach the Waddle Dee to cook. Many says no weapons. Remember this for an upcoming chapter. So yeah, I'm sure you're sick of my endless babbling by now, so I'll shut up. Well, that ending note meant absolutely nothing because, once again, the fanfiction hasn't been updated in 7 years. Anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. If you want me to read more fanfictions, let me know. You can also message me if you have a request of a fanfiction I should read. That's all I've got to say. This is a Pale Recluse, and I'll see you the next time I decide to come out of hiding.